On September 15th of 2015, a man who spent years on his craft decided to release a game. Let's start a bit earlier here. A young man is playing some games after school. His friends call him Toby. Personally, his interests lay in a game from the other side of the world called Earthbound. In fact, he was so interested he went through the process of playing the third untranslated game in the trilogy. He loved this game so much, he decided to do something interesting. Toby releases a game, or rather a hack set in the Earthbound universe. He dubbed it the Halloween hack. While this game is primitive, it is remarkable for a first public release of an indie developer, and we can recognize many of the elements that are present today. Now, it's not known if this was the reason or if it was just coincidental, but later that month, a chapter of Homestuck, an indie comic popular in many online communities, released a chapter using one of his songs. He continued to release music for this comic for the remainder of its lifespan. But Toby didn't just want to work on someone else's dream, he wanted to do something of his own. Toby decided to create a game about a kid who goes into another realm and saves monsters. He scrapped that idea. Instead, he went with a game called Toby was heavily inspired by the Shin Megami Tensei series, a series in which you're able to bring demons over to your side by using words rather than just using violence. He expanded on this concept by creating a game where you could spare enemies rather than having to kill all of them. In fact, you could spare every enemy in his game. During his Kickstarter, he also introduced a reward which allowed people to put their characters in the game. This introduced the characters Muffet, So Sorry, and Glide. While Muffet has become a fan-favorite character in the community, So Sorry and Glide seem to be very minor characters that don't get much support. However, it's very interesting to see that people were able to impact the future of Undertale due to these rewards. Now, this game wasn't released yet. He still needed to make money to survive. So he decided to release this on Kickstarter, hoping to get around $5,000. And he did manage to reach that goal by over 10 times. Now, this is a really ambitious game he was creating, and Toby Fox cannot do anything. In fact, you could say he is quite an inexperienced game developer, but the big thing he was lacking is, well, his art. If you look here, it's kind of rudimentary and basic. So he decided to hire someone named Temmie Chang, who is a VTuber now. Neat. Toby decided to create a monster based off this that today we call Temmie. Around halfway through development, Toby had to pause development of the game due to his college. However, after he finished, he decided to go back to it and work vigorously on the game, completing the third area of the game he dubbed Waterfall. Obviously, he has a few things in common with the king. Moving on to complete the fourth area as well, Hotland. As 2014 came to an end, he finished the final boss, Asgore, leaving him with only half a year to finish the game. During February, he decided to add a third path, which is a bit concerning, and finally he did complete the game of August of 2015, just a month before he finally releases the game, which does appear to be a pattern coming from him. Now, Undertale was released to a small audience of around... yeah, who am I kidding? It popped off. It was the biggest game of 2015. Nearly every gaming YouTuber under the sun has played this game. In fact, a poll was conducted and it claimed Undertale was not just the best game of the year, but the best game of all time. With such popularity does come controversy. Famously, Markiplier abandoned his playthrough due to fan backlash, and an artist was poisoned with needles and cookies for their shipping preferences. Okay, well technically it's unknown if it was because of the ships, but the cookies came from someone who knew her art, which means it probably was personal, but obviously these are profound things that affect people on an individual basis every day. And I have to wonder, what is that like for Toby Fox? I feel like there's someone who's explained this better than me. Let's just keep to the games for now. After the release of Undertale, it became prevalent across the internet, but people wanted more, and thus the Undertale AU was created. While AUs did exist before Undertale, it was much more of a niche thing before it came out. Undertale seemed to spark something within people to want more content, even if it was completely divorced from the main content other than a few characters or a few plot threads. So it's just amazing to think about how such a small game created by one guy and an artist managed to have such a profound impact on just fandoms in general. In September 15th of 2018, the 3-year anniversary, an official Japanese port was released, spreading the game to the gaming capital of the world. A small company took notice of this game, and we'll get back to this later. Now, if you've looked into the mechanics of Undertale, you're probably familiar with fun values, a random number between 1 and 100 that causes random events to occur. At fun level 80 through 89, a clam girl will appear, and she talks about this girl named Susie. We never meet anybody named Susie. In fact, I like to think Toby makes fun of this fact because in the port to the Switch version, he does mention that we never met a Susie, but that our meeting is fast approaching. Now, some crackpot theorists out there, the main one really being Swanky Box, claimed that some type of sequel was in the works, and this was all a promo for it. Now, that's kind of dumb, just like some piece of dialogue in a port of a game is hinting towards a sequel. Like, that's just a bit not logical. Shit. Deltarune was literally dropped within hours of its announcement. Remember that game that Toby once scrapped? Well, he decided to come back to it, building the first chapter of this game. Obviously, it blew up. At this point, Toby was a world-renowned video game creator, and everything he created was taken with some sense of respect. Now, Toby did recognize this, and he does believe that if he didn't do something interesting, this was just going to be the second game Toby Fox released. So he took the themes of Undertale and flipped it on its head. Where in Undertale your choices matter, in Deltarune the big theme is that they don't. Originally there was supposed to only be one ending to this game. However, a few different things point to the fact that there will now be multiple endings. Now, I can't give much of an opinion on this game as Chapter 2 only released around a year ago. So I do believe there's a future here, and we'll have to come back to this at some point. Now during this time, Toby actually kind of became a big deal. Remember that company that noticed Toby a while ago? They were Game Freak, aka the Pokemon guys. Toby provided the soundtrack to a flopped game called Small Town Heroes. This was kind of hyped around the time of its release, but it did manage to flop pretty bad as the gameplay was to be desired. However, it was majorly agreed upon that the soundtrack was pretty good. Game Freak seemed to have realized the potential Toby was hiding here, so they brought him on to guest track for their new Pokemon Sword and Shield game. And the song was pretty decent, so they did bring him on for the recent Scarlet and Violet games, where he did compose like a lot of the songs. He was actually a major composer for this game. Not only that, but Toby managed to organize an orchestra to play back in 2020 that played his music in front of thousands of real-life people and was live-streamed to tens of thousands more. Today, the future of Undertale, or rather Toby, is looking pretty good. Recently had a small ARG featuring a major character in the second chapter of Deltarune. Toby also released a newsletter that will now be releasing quarterly for the foreseeable future, and development for the rest of Deltarune is going great. A young boy was in class. Recently, he heard of this new indie game that was released. This kid mistook it for Yumi Niki, after seeing some weird skeleton guy and assuming it was that character from the game he's heard of a few months back. But once he discovered this game was different, once he saw some guy play it, he was enamored. For the next few years, he was obsessed with this game. He read the fan comics, he watched the reactions. It reached the point where he'd spend nearly all his free time with this game. But people move on, especially kids. Years later, this game still has a soft spot in his heart. He decided to make a video about this game he spent so many years on, and that kid grew up to be
I was pretty young at the time, but my first experience with Undertale was actually being spoiled on the Photoshop Flowey fight by a random YouTube video near the time of Undertale's release. This fight alone had made me so curious about what came before it, and how the story could have possibly gone to this point. So I looked more and more into Undertale, and it wasn't long before I was hooked. I think from there, I was sucked into this game for the same reasons as everyone else was. The characters are extremely compelling, the music is all fantastic, and the game leaves just enough questions unanswered to make you want more. I definitely wasn't anywhere near as involved with the Undertale community back then as I am now, but as I grow older, I feel like my appreciation for Undertale only grows with time. Even though this game was released so long ago, I still find more and more aspects of this game that are amazing all these years later.
I first played Undertale in October of 2015, 1 month after it was released, and I could not figure out how to spare Toriel. She actually killed me on accident the first time I fought her, and then I was like, oh, so you have chosen death? When I did it, I felt bad, but I didn't know how to restart the game. It wasn't like in Deltarune where you can just use the menu to go back to the title screen. So I just kept going forward hoping to die on the next enemy and up. Tragically, if you do that, and you die, you just wake up back in Snowdin. Papyrus was the only one I spared, because he surrenders if you hurt him enough. So I spent the whole game going through this cycle of like, kill a boss, feel legitimately depressed about it, and then slowly get pulled back out of it, by just the pure charm and joy of the other characters. When Sans said I'd be dead where I stand, part of me was just like, do it, because I felt like I deserved it, until I remembered that if he did fight me, you know, even if he killed me, it's not like he'd bring me back to the beginning, right? I'd just be back in Hot Land, and everyone would still be dead. So, I was a little relieved when he let me keep going. I love Asgore's introduction, because the way he just frowns and takes a step back just immediately tells you so much about his character. I was so relieved when the game let me choose to at least attempt to spare him, until Flora showed up and ruined it. Haha. When I finally beat Omega Flowey, I was staring at that choice for a good 10 minutes debating, because every other time it had been an accident. You know? I didn't mean to kill Toriel. I didn't want to kill Undyne, or Medidin, or Asgore. But here I finally had a real choice, right? No tricks, or puzzles, or confusion. Just, here's Flowey. He is at your mercy. What do you want to do? And I knew that every other time I had killed I'd regretted it immediately. But I was also thinking about how unfair it felt that all those other characters had to die. Sort of the sunken cost fallacy. Like, if Toriel, Asgore, Undyne, and Medidin all had to die, when none of them deserved it. But part of me wondered about what would have happened if I'd spared Flowey instead, so I went back and fought Asgore again, and it was different. He remembered fighting me. And when I offered to spare him, he refused. The game had remembered. And then I knew I had to share this with someone. So I bought the game for a friend and sat over their shoulder like a hawk, watching their whole playthrough, and for them, it was completely different. They dodged Flowey's bullets, they spared Toriel first try, and Undyne. It was amazing to me how organic and alive this game felt. And I started wondering where the end was, right? Like, how much could one game designer possibly have hidden away in such a short little adventure? And let me tell you, I still haven't found the end of that question. Every day I feel like I'm discovering something new about these games. So like, if I have to dedicate my life to one game series, I feel like I picked a good one. You know? Like, yeah man, I could totally keep playing Undertale and Deltarune forever. It's a good game to lose your soul to.
I didn't expect Undertale to have such a significant impact on my life. It was a game I played around the time I was still fresh out of college and unsure of where to take my life in the short term. I was stuck in a horrible temp job at a post office where nobody appreciated me and I was barely trained. And Undertale brought me joy during this time where I was otherwise emotionally devastated. And during the late fall of 2015, I began brainstorming Inverted Fate, a project that would stick with me over the next 7 years. Over the years, my work on Inverted Fate and involvement within the Undertale community helped me through some frankly grueling and demoralizing days as a cog in the retail machine. Despite its short length, the game's characters, music, story, and world left a lasting impact and encouraged me to return to music composition and spriting, and create one of the most ambitious projects I've made to date. I'm so grateful for all the friends I've met through this game and Deltarune. Here's to many more years of laughs, smiles, and tears.
So, the main thing to note about pre-Undertale Andrew is that he didn't know what fandoms were. Or at least he didn't really get them, and even if he did, he thought they were for other people. He did not use social media. He had some understanding of fanfiction, but only insofar as was required to make the evaluation that it was cringe. All that is to say, I never joined the Undertale fandom. Joining implies intent, or at least consent, to participate in some sort of activity that I understood and actively wanted some part in. What I did was trip down a manhole and spend the next 4 months of my life trying to escape Narnia, before befriending some friendly denizens of the realm, becoming embroiled in the court politics of the Ice Queen, and inheriting her kingdom after she succumbed to whooping cough. It was a terrifying, likely pathological, and ultimately life-changing experience, and it was inflicted on me by some Homestuck composer and his debut game dev project. Whenever that tired old question about whether games count as art comes up, the only answer I can be bothered to give anymore is, who cares? Whatever games are, they can do that. And I don't know about you, but annihilating a million people's brain chemistry at intercontinental range is good enough for me. I decided to get myself behind the wheel of that Death Star as soon as possible and destroy the teen years of the next generation of nerdy loner kids.
Hello? Hello? Sorry, I think I fixed the transference we've been dealing with. So as I was saying, Undertale meant a whole lot to me, and I'd like to think it means a whole lot to a lot of other people too. Now, while you're able to see the history of this game, it's important to note there's a lot of stories that I can't tell here today. For each person who's played this game, it's impacted them in a whole unique different way. It is important to know that the history of Undertale does not end with Toby Fox. It does not end with the game he created. It rather ends when all the people who've played his game, no. All the people who have ever, or will ever, be impacted by anything of his game are all gone. But for now, I think that's all. Good night. Thank you for watching all the way to the end of this video, but I did want to give special thanks to the 4 people who lended their voices and stories: Dorked, Halfbred Chaos, Andrew Cunningham, and Mystic Slime. They really managed to help me with this video, and without them this video wouldn't be possible. And I'm not just saying that because they lended their voices and stories for it. I'm saying this because without them I would have never had the confidence to make this video. After watching some of their videos, it occurred to me that they managed to inspire me so much, why can't I do the same? So I really hope that you will stick with me and see this content, and hopefully I'll be able to inspire you like they managed to inspire me.